What's good, the peoples? I had some weird spare time tonight where I didn't have anything else to do, and I didn't feel like playing video games for once in my miserable existence. I've been thinking a lot about just D&D stuff in general, but I don't actually have any D&D planning that I can do right now for the Sunday Flumph games because we're going to be off for the next 2 Sundays because I will be traveling. Oh, don't break your stream there, Brick Road. There we go. So I thought I would just do a book through of. I did one of these a couple months ago when I got the Lord of the Rings 5e game. I went through the whole book and just kind of skimmed it, and I was like, you know what? I don't have any other games to do that with. My gaming shelf is mostly 5th edition stuff or really, really old Dungeons and Dragons stuff. But speaking of really, really old games, I do have this. This is the Serenity role-playing game. This is a game from another era. This was published 2005, which was right around the height of Serenity's popularity, I would say. And I have no idea why I still have this. I used to own a bunch of books like this that have just gotten lost or sold away over the years. But for some reason, I hung on to this one. And I haven't opened this book in 20 years. But we did play this game back in the day. And they don't really make a lot of games like this anymore, I don't think. Back in like the mid-aughts, there was a tabletop game for basically any license that anyone could get a hold of. They would turn into a tabletop game. And a lot of times they would use some existing dice system. I'm trying to think now if I can name any that use the OGL. Like the original Wizards of the Coast OGL, which 3rd edition used and which Pathfinder was published. There was some Star Wars stuff maybe under the OGL. I don't remember. This is not an OGL game. And nowadays when you see licenses like this in tabletop games, they tend to be more associated with like, I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to draw a distinction where there isn't one. But like this is specifically for Serenity the movie, and not just Firefly as a whole. And this is at the height of Firefly's popularity. And maybe that's the distinction, right? So like when this comes out in 2005, there's probably a push, like if we wait another year, this property's not going to be popular anymore. We have to strike while the irons is hot. While as like the kind of licensed stuff you see in video games and tabletop games nowadays have a more of an evergreen feel to them. Like, whatever you might say about the politics of the situation, like something like that Hogwarts game that came out is based on an IP that will be forever popular, whereas Serenity like had its time, and stuff like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter and Chronicles of Narnia, maybe? Have I ever seen a Chronicles of Narnia tabletop game? I assume not, and I don't know why that just jumped into my head. But anyway, Serenity was definitely like an of-the-era sci-fi show, and everybody loved it intensely for like 2 years, and then it got canceled, and everybody flipped out, like, how could they cancel the best show ever? And then they made the movie, which this game is based off of, to wrap up everything that got canceled, and then everybody forgot about it, and nobody has thought about Serenity for a long time until I pulled the book off the shelf. So here's how it is. The Earth got used up. We found a new solar system and used terraforming technology to create hundreds of new Earths. This is a sci-fi game. And I'm usually not a sci-fi guy. Usually sci-fi is not my wheelhouse. But the show Firefly and then the movie Serenity was actually more of like a Western. It was like a blend of sci-fi and Western that really appealed to me for whatever reason. I'm not a big Western guy either, but like the really, really good Westerns stick to my bones. And this show in particular had some really great moments. So we're going to do a book through. I'm just going to go through the book. I don't remember anything about this game or this system. I don't know what dice system it uses. I can probably get rid of this because I'm going to have to open the book here anyway. And written by Jamie Chambers. I don't know who that is. And I assume like all the artwork and stuff is just going to be stills of the movie. I guess there's maps of like starships and things in here. I did run some Spelljammer recently. I say recently, this was like 2 years ago now, but that's recent for me at my age, which is like D&D's version of sci-fi, but it's like very fantasy-driven sci-fi. And I know that the Pathfinder people just put out either this year or last year, they did like their version of like a sci-fi Pathfinder game. So there's definitely people who want these kinds of settings. This game comes from 2005, so this is I wonder how much of Firefly is like a you had to be there thing. I wonder how much of this... Could I go back and watch this show? I mean, I could physically watch it. I own the DVDs. I could pull out my box with all my DVDs. I wonder if it's streaming on anything. Let's just ask. Let's see if Google's AI question answer knows. Is Firefly streaming on anything sensible? Let's see. According to Google AI, it's on Hulu. Okay. Yeah, you could watch it on Hulu if you wanted, I guess. I wonder if I could. I wonder if I could go back to Firefly and watch it on Hulu again and enjoy it. But okay, it's a sci-fi western kind of thing, and I don't remember anything about the dice system, and we only played this game... We played it twice. I ran it once, and I played in it once. Who ran it when I played in it? I don't remember. And when I ran it, I probably only ran it for a couple of sessions. And... Because the problem with a lot of these licensed games is you buy into them because you're a fan of the property. Like, oh, I love Serenity. I love Firefly. That was one of my favorite shows. I'm going to buy... And I love tabletop gaming. I'm going to buy the tabletop game, and I'm going to run it for a group, and it's going to be like Firefly. But it's not. It's not going to be like Firefly. That's just not how it works. And so, like, the luster of a licensed property like this starts to fall off very quickly if the setting isn't robust enough to hold your game. And I don't know that Serenity is. Whereas something like Lord of the Rings might be. And then there's a sci-fi book I'm waiting on that I'm coming in September that's based on the Phantasy Star games. I'm wondering if that'll have the same issue. But... Introduction, here's how it is. So it describes what a role-playing game is, describes what the Serenity role-playing game is, the crew, those are your player characters, the GM, Game Master, is what we're calling our Game Master for this game. We had a period of time in the aughts where like every game had their own proprietary name for what this was. What was it in Lord of the Rings when I just ran through? Was it Storyteller or Archivist or something? But the Game Master is in charge of the game. I do want to just quickly skim through this. Let's see. One player needs to... So I like this a lot. One player, like specifically calling the GM out as a player, is very, very important. And I'm not sure how important it might have been in the environment of 2005, but I feel like definitely nowadays we forget that the GM is a player at the table. And this calls it out in the first two words. One player needs to take charge of the game and take on extra responsibilities. Love that phrasing. I love that. I want that to be in every tabletop game I ever read. The Game Master is a player. The Game Master has more responsibilities. And if we don't acknowledge that from time to time, gaming gets into a bad state. What are these responsibilities? What do we say? Plays the part of all the NPCs. The GM is the player's window into the verse. Right. Okay, so the verse is the universe, right? This book, I'm just remembering now, this book is written in voice. It's written... Is it written from the perspective of one of the characters? I don't think so. I think it's just kind of written in the voice of Firefly, which is to say this kind of... It's a Joss Whedon property, so it's kind of written in this kind of quippy, Whedon-esque voice, but it's not written by Joss Whedon, right? It's written by, I just said, what was the Jamie Chambers. And I remember reading through this book back in the day, looking back now, like, yeah, it's Jamie Chambers, whoever that is, trying to kind of capture some Whedonisms and not going all the way there. So we might be in for some fun little cringe as we go through the voice of the game. But yeah, the GM, that's the GM's job. The NPCs, the verse, and then it says that another role of the GM plays is that of arbiter. GM is the only person who knows all the facts in the game. Fair enough. that is something that modern RPGs sometimes play around with, in that there will be information hidden from the GM, or there will be information the GM does not have control over, in terms of like the GM not being able to take actions without spending some resource. And I don't think this game has anything like that. So sessions, adventures, and campaigns. So a session is one night you get together and play. Adventures are like several sessions that tell a single story, and then the campaign is all of the adventures together. And this is something I'm also remembering this book does. If you're not familiar with role-playing games, you probably don't know the difference between sessions, adventures, and campaigns. We'll fix that in a jiffy. I remember this book does that a lot. Like, it'll mention something, like in the summary paragraph, and then say, like, we'll get to that in a minute. We'll mention that in the upcoming section. Like, yeah, we know, it's a summary paragraph. You don't have to say we'll fix that in a jiffy. So this does have a very amateurish feel to it, which can be charming. It can be fun. Let's get into it here. So there's the dice. So we use a whole set of dice over here. D2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. No D20, which is interesting. It calls about polyhedral dice as not being as scary as it sounds. I wonder how many copies of books like these actually get sold to people that don't already know what these dice are. Because what they're saying here is like, oh, you bought this book because you're a fan of Serenity and you want to play the Serenity game, but you don't know tabletop gaming, so we have to introduce you to the dice. Well, I wonder how common that actually was. I feel like anybody who bought this book would be someone like me, someone who's like already into tabletop gaming and wanted to check out Serenity. Okay, basics. Attributes. Characters in the verse have 6 attributes. Skills reflect the character's training and education. The core mechanic. Almost every time a character does something, he rolls an attribute and a skill die and adds the results together. You can definitely tell this book's age because it's using he as the neutral pronoun, and I don't feel like any modern book I've read in the past few years would ever do that. Steps. Some circumstances make an action easier or harder. The dice can change in steps, changing the die type to a higher or lower value. Okay, so this is saying is you get an attribute plus a skill. You probably have a die associated with your attribute and then a die associated with your skill. You roll those together, but you might increase the value of the die as we go. Depending, like I can raise the difficulty by raising or lowering which die you're allowed to use. This task, usually you get a D8 for your attribute on this task, but because it's really hard, you're only going to get a D6. Is that what we're saying here? This is kind of just getting some setting material. Find a ship, find a crew, keep flying. This is the promise of Serenity, is these characters and this crew. Just looking at the picture right now is making me kind of nostalgic for the show. I wonder, I've got all kinds of free time this week. Maybe I'll try pulling it up on Hulu. We'll see. But it was a wonderful cast, and one of two things will happen when you sit down to play a game like this. Like, one, are your players going to try to play this cast, right? Like, are you going to try to have these characters at your table? Or are you going to try to, like, recreate the vibe with original characters? And neither really works super well, in my opinion, in my experience. All right. Oh, no, we're not giving scores to attributes. Each attribute has its own dice value. Got it. So here's Mal, Captain of Serenity. You got a character sheet right here, ready to go. So if you did want to just play a story with the characters, you're good to go. I feel like they should not the best still artwork or still screenshot to use of Mal. Let's see, we gave him animal handling, athletics, covert, discipline, pistol and rifle, which are under. So okay, he's got the gun skill, but then he's got like two different. So his gun skill is a D6, but he's got like specialties in that skill. Pistol at a D12, rifle at a D8. Cool. So a little tiny bit of medical expertise. Okay, so if you wanted to play the characters, you have them here. We've got weapons and equipment. He's got some traits, which I'm guessing are kind of like feats. So let's just take a look at one here. Leadership, major asset. Mal has a tendency to inspire loyalty in those who serve under him. So we don't have any mechanics for what this means. It's just like, maybe it's a thing where like, okay, a player is going to have their attribute plus skill, but then they can throw on a trait if they think it applies. I see that a lot. We saw that in Broken Compass, and I've seen that in Household recently. And then role-playing notes. So we have just a bunch of lore here, which This is not a quote from the show or from the movie or anything. This looks like it is fan fiction written by the person or people who wrote this book. All right, so there's Captain Mal. Zoe is the first mate. She's got rifle and shotgun, but not pistol. That's fair enough. We got the pilot, expert pilot Wash. Jane the mercenary. Kaylee, Serenity's mechanic. Inara, a registered companion. Right, because she's not part of the Serenity crew, but she leased out one of the escape pods for her female companionship enterprise, we'll say. Shepard Book was one of my favorite characters from the show. And this, I do wonder if this is a situation where they got the license for specifically the movie, and they can't use any imagery or anything mentioned in the show. I wonder if that's the case, because I do notice like all of these, especially this was not Book's look in the show. I don't think. God, I haven't seen these things in 20 years. How would I even know? Simon is a fugitive doctor. River is the fugitive psychic, so she's kind of just like the magical girl of the series. Chapter 1, Find a Crew. So this is going to be... Okay, so you've got different roles on the crew. We've got pilot, mechanic, medic, security, socialite, and captain. I wonder if those are like character classes, or if these are just like roles on the ship. Let me just take a look here. I guess because a ship can fly without all of these things. One of the storylines in the movie was that Mal was kicking Simon off of the ship, and Simon was like their doctor, but like they had an argument and he was going to kick them off or something, so they would have had to fly without a doctor for a while. A heroic level, so this would be like Greenhorns would be like just starting out. Veterans would be... Oh, I think I'm remembering something else. I think I'm going to really enjoy turning this page, because there's like 3 levels of play, right? Similar to like how D&D has like novice characters from like 1 to 5, and then like middling range characters from like 5 to 12, and then like epic level characters higher than that. So we got Greenhorn, we got Veteran, this is where most of the gameplay would be, I would think, and then Big Damn Heroes. Oh, I remember that now. Excellent. So yeah, okay, you choose a heroic level. Is this your checklist for character creation? Is this what we're going with? For experienced players ready to set sail right away, here's a no-frills checklist. So choose a heroic level. The GM will tell you whether you are Greenhorns, Veterans, or Big Damn Heroes. I think when I ran this game, the one time I ran it, I think I let them all be Big Damn Heroes. Because I knew I was probably only going to run the game once. Then you choose traits. You choose a trait. An asset is a good trait, and a complication makes life interesting with an apostrophe and no G. So these are merits and flaws. So you buy assets. So you get a pool of attribute points you use to build your hero with. Generate attributes. So this gives you your die total for your attributes. What were the attributes, by the way? We had agility, strength, vitality, alertness, intelligence, and willpower. This is a very glossy book, and I don't have the best lighting in this room. I apologize for that. Calculate derived attributes. So your life points and your initiative are derived from your other base stats. Choose skills. You get 20 skill points plus the point provided by your heroic level. So Big Damn Heroes begin with 54 attribute points, whereas like a Greenhorn begins with 42 and 54. It's not that big of a... Maybe that was one of my interests. One of my complaints about the game is that there's not a lot of room for character advancement. You can't run a very long campaign of this, because eventually you'll just hit the state where either diminishing returns kicks in, or you'll just like reach the power cap of what the game can handle. Why is there a section on race in Firefly? Despite what sideshow barkers tell you, there's no evidence of alien life in the verse. Though mankind has blazed a trail through the stars and terraformed and colonized most of a new star system, the children of Earth that was have only one deadly enemy, themselves. More on that later. I told you, the book just does this a lot. It mentions something and it says more on that later. We'll get to that. So obviously this is just here because games of this time have race. D&D was obviously the king of the mountain, and then even sci-fi games, you had your species or your, what do they call? What was the other big sci-fi game we played a lot of around this time? Was it Alternity? What did Alternity call character? Maybe it was just called race. I don't know. But this is just here to say that there's only human characters. There's no aliens in the game. Okay. So everybody's a human. You get your trait. You get your assets. You get your complications. Here's River doing some weird ninja stuff. So you can attribute die cost. So when you buy up your attributes, what do you start at? Does everything start at a D4 and then you buy it up or down? So to buy up to, I'm just gonna have to read this for a section here. Average yokels have a D6 for everything. Someone with a strength of a D4 might be a 90-pound weakling, while a D10 could be a muscle-bound weightlifter. A D12 is the normal starting maximum, though truly experienced characters might be able to achieve higher scores. So that accounts for this. D4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and then 12 plus D2, and 12 plus D4. The GM has decided the crew will start as greenhorns. You're still better off than the all D6 yokels. You have 42 points to spend, that number adjusted depending on the traits you selected. If you're set on a D20 agility, then take 10 points out of your pool. So to buy up to a D10, you only have to spend 10 points. You don't have to spend 8 points, then spend another 10 points. I've seen games that'll do that, where you have to pay the cost at each step. This is telling you the total cost to buy all the way up to that die. Great. We've got physical and mental attributes. We've got agility, strength, vitality, alertness, intelligence, willpower. So the standard set, basically. So dexterity, strength, constitution. Well, we don't technically have the standard 6 from Dungeons & Dragons. We don't have something about charisma here. We've got alertness, which is like general perception, intuition, observation. Here, stealthy foot. We got intelligence is smart, and then we got willpower is force. Oh, we're saying willpower is force of personality. Okay, that's fine. So alertness would be wisdom, intelligence would be intelligence, and then willpower would be charisma, basically. Force of personality. Derive attributes. Initiative is to see who goes first. I'm glad this game has an initiative system. Too many games don't have initiative systems anymore. And the first thing you have to do when you've got a game where you don't have an initiative system is you have to invent an initiative system. Has always been my experience. And then life points. How do you die? How much damage you can take before you pass out or die. When your character is punched, stabbed, or shot, the damage comes out of your total life points. If your damage is equal or greater than your life points, you're out of the action. You calculate your total with vitality plus willpower. Of course, it's helpful to know whether you'll need a bandage or a tombstone. There's that voice again. So damage comes in 2 types, stun and wounds. So stun puts you over your total, you're knocked out. Wounds are a bit more worrisome. They represent serious injury from flesh wounds to bullets through the liver. And we are... Where's our character sheet at for this game? Let's go to... Usually it's in the back here. Oh, what's coming out in Dragonlance in 2005? Legends of the Twins. Oh boy. Can't wait for that. Let's just... We've got all the space slang and stuff back. Where's our character sheet at in this book? We do have one, right? I didn't see one. Usually it would be right in the back here. But no, we've got an advertisement for Dragon. Was it right in the front, maybe? Did we have to make our own character sheets for this, or... Huh. Okay. Well, maybe we'll come across it in a later... Maybe we need a line just saying we're not there yet. I don't know. Okay. Skills. So skill cost... So skills can only go up to a D6, and then if you put more into it after that, you're buying into a specialty. Right. So, when Mal is firing with a gun, he always gets this D6. If he's firing with a gun he's not has a specialty in, he had what? Pistols and rifles. So if he's firing with a shotgun, he gets that D6. If he's fighting with a pistol, he can go into his pistol specialty, and then his shotgun, he goes into his, or his rifle, he goes into his rifle specialty. That's all pretty standard. White Wolf did this same kind of thing with its skill sets. Depending on what the actual skills are, this is the wrong quote to have in the skills section. From Wash, I'm a leaf on the wind, watch how I soar. And if you've seen the movie, you know why that's the wrong line to put in the skill section. What was I talking about? Okay, firearms are a really good example of a skill that very cleanly breaks down into this general and then specialty, but a lot of other skills don't. And I'm wondering how well this game handled it. Unskilled actions, let's see here. Simon is the verse's worst liar. Put him on the spot and just watch the train wreck. Mal barely knows which end of the sword to hold, and Jane will never win a spelling bee. You just roll your attribute die and hope for the best. So you can make unskilled checks, is what this is saying. Secrets. Ooh. We don't actually know a lot about the crew of the Serenity. No, because you don't have access to Joss Whedon's character Bible when you wrote this, I'm sure. While you might play an open book character such as Wash or Kaylee, it's also fun to play a character with something to hide. Plot points. Okay, are these my wiggle dice? The sun shines on a dog's backside occasionally, and even a blind squirrel stumbles upon an acorn every once in a while. I feel like this book needed another editing pass, right? Like, that's the kind of language you would expect in a character from Serenity, but it's not punchy and it's not quippy the way that Whedon would have written it. I feel like an editor could have caught that in the past. The sun shines on a dog's backside every once in a while, and even a blind squirrel stumbles upon a nut. I don't know. Our game has a mechanic called plot points. When a character is in desperate trouble or really must succeed on an action, or is not keen on dying right at this moment, plot points ride to the rescue. When you have plot points to spend, no power in the verse can stop you. So this is an extra die. So you accumulate plot points and you spend them to get a bonus die on a particular roll. You can spend them after the dice are thrown if the situation is truly desperate. No, I got that wrong. You spend the points and make the roll. If you see the roll first and then choose to spend points, they're even more expensive. I don't see a lot of gameplay purpose to being punitive like that. Just let your players see the roll and then decide if they want to put points on it. Because trying to organize my thoughts on this. I've played a lot of games where you have to decide before the roll whether or not you want to put your wiggle dice on it, or whatever the game calls it, your resource that you have to enhance your dice rolls, because it's a limited resource as a player. You want to make sure you're using it when you have it. And I don't know how many times over the years I've been like, okay, I really, really, really need to make this roll. I better spend one of my dice on it. But then the roll was fine, and I turned out to not need the dice, but I've still wasted it. So really, you just need to let the players see the roll first and then make the informed decision to either eat the failure or spend the resource. That, to me, is the fairest way to do it, and I don't see what is gained by being more punitive like this. Because if they spend the resource up front and then pass the roll, they don't get the resource back, right? You don't get to... I don't know. This is something I feel like would not go well in a modern game. Plot point pool. Let's see here. You get six at the beginning of a campaign, and you may keep up to a dozen in your pool. And then how do you earn them? The remainder are converted into advancements. But this is kind of how I use blips in D&D. So, okay, you earn these plot points during the game, and you can sit on them so they roll over into advancement points, which I guess you get at the end of stories, which you can, let's see here, buy up new skills or new attributes. Or you could use them to get your rerolls during a session. This is all pretty standard stuff. I wonder, because I came up with the working concept for blips in 2016 or so, when I really started using them in D&D. I wonder if I had any vestigial memories of this game and their plot points in there. Removing complications. Okay, so your complications are character flaws you give yourself to make things interesting with an apostrophe, and you can remove those with advancement points. Great. So we have our characters. Now we're into chapter 2, traits and skills. The good, the bad, and the big damn ugly. Okay. Here we go. Here's assets and complications. So yeah, the traits don't have mechanics in and of themselves. What you'll do is you'll have your role, and then if you think you've got a trait or a complication that applies, you'll just say, hey, I've got a trait or a complication that applies here. So if it's a minor trait, it's a minus... Why does it say point cost? Dogs are just going to go crazy because my wife is traveling right now. I'm alone in the house, and I've got my Chihuahua out there who just, every time he hears a noise outside of the house, he thinks she's coming home. Why does it say point cost here? Wait, watch out for contradictory traits. Some just don't go together. We'll leave it to common sense and ruling of the GM, whose call on traits is final, to determine if the ones you've chosen are suitable. Oof. That's an oof for me. So, okay, there is some obviousness to this, right? Like, if you're going to have a system like this with assets and complications, like one of the complications might be blind or bad eyesight, and then one of the assets might be, like, excellent eyesight. And obviously you can't have both. But saying in the same sentence, we'll leave it to common sense and the ruling of the GM, you've got to... I realize that they're writing in voice, and, like, having just common horse sense, like, that's part of the voice of the setting. But you can't have a line like this. Because a player... Like, it says the DM's ruling is final, in parentheses, but the first part of the line is, we'll leave it to common sense. Whose common sense? Your common sense as the player or the GM's? Well, now you're arguing about it at the table because you think you should have both of these things and then apply them however you want, but the GM doesn't seem to think so. And that can go the other way too. Like, maybe it makes perfect sense to you and everybody else at the table, but the GM just doesn't see the vision. This needed some hammering out. Maybe it'll make more sense as we go through the actual list of traits. All right, so we have allure. So you're physically attractive. Either a handsome fellow or a lovely woman. Why can't you be a lovely fellow or a handsome woman? Because this game was published in 2005. Here we go. Athlete, born behind the wheel. Cortex Spectre. Okay, so the Cortex is the central government computer. So I thought this was going to be like some kind of weird paranormal stuff. No, this just means you're not on the grid. You're a ghost gliding through the system. Love that, actually. Fighting type. Friends in high places if you've got contacts, friends in low places. So we've got two different assets for contacts. Okay. I think I'm okay with that. I think in a more general game system, you would just want to have an asset for contacts. But I think in this setting specifically, I think this makes a lot of sense. Splitting this up into two. And I'm okay with that. Good name. Made a name for yourself through some heroic or charitable deed and have underworld credibility. Well, see, now we've done the opposite, though. Like, your contacts are split up into high and low places, but your good name can go high or low depending. That was an episode of the show, wasn't it? There was an episode of the show where, like, they went to this backwater mining town, and, like, Jane is, like, the dickhead mercenary character just happened to have been to that town before and did something where they thought he was heroic, so he has a good name in that town. That seems weird to me that your contacts are split up between, like, high society and the underworld, but your good name, because, like, take somebody who has a lot of underworld cred, okay? Like, say you wouldn't have for a Cortex Spectre. Let's make something up. Like, let's say you're known as Billy the Butcher. You've got some underworld cred. But, like, you're on the radar of authority. So your good name is an asset in one sense, but it's a complication in another sense. We've got healthy as a horse, heavy tolerance. Okay, this is talking about drugs and alcohol. Highly educated if you're really, really smart. Intimidate in manner. Leadership, lightning reflexes, math whiz. This is a little... What are we saying here? You perform complex mathematical calculations effortlessly and solve most mathematical problems without fail and no need to roll the dice. I don't know that we need both highly educated and math whiz. This is kind of a trap skill, in my opinion, and lots of games have these. D&D has these, which is a skill that sounds great on paper, and you could almost think about how this is going to fit into your character concept that you have. But then at the actual table, it comes up so little. Like, I can probably count on 0 hands how many times I've asked my players in the past 10 years, hey, you need to do this calculation really, really fast. So like an example of a trap skill from 5th edition D&D would be something like, the butt monkeys at my table would definitely be like animal handling or sleight of hand almost never, ever, ever get used. That could just be because I'm a certain flavor DM, though, right? That could be my fault as a DM. Whereas this math was, I don't see this ever coming up. Anyway, we've got a mean left hook. Wait, what's the difference between a mean left hook and your fighting type? Why do we have two different? Fighting type, you know how to handle yourself in almost any combat type situation, whether it's rough and tumble brawl or deadly shoot and match. Mean left hook is you capable of killing a man with your bare hands. Okay, this is specifically unarmed damage. Okay. Mechanical empathy. I actually love the phrasing of that. Mechanical empathy. Because there's so much in the show. It's not enough to just like have the technical knowledge to like keep the machines running. Like there's so much emphasis on like treating the machines like characters and like speaking to the machine like, come on girl, we just need you to get this just to the next port. We just need one more week. Can the engine hold out for just that long? You know, like you got to talk to and build a rapport with your vehicles, with your machinery. So I love the phrasing of this. Very, very in universe. Military rank, moneyed individual, natural linguist. How many so the characters in Firefly speak a pidgin of English and Cantonese. So what are we saying here? This talent helps you blend in with the locals no matter where you wind up. You learn language specialties at half their normal cost. This is fine, but in the setting, I think everyone pretty much just speaks the same language. I don't remember a lot of the show having different languages or dialects or anything. Nature lover. This would be another trap skill, in my opinion. This just could never come up. You feel most in tune with your surroundings when you're sleeping on the ground under starlit skies or walking amidst the trees of a forest or riding your horse across the prairies. Like, there is a lot of Western theming and coding in this setting, but most of the actual stories and action take place on spaceships. So how often are you going to be in an outdoor setting to make use of that? We've got nose for trouble. You've got a mental alarm that sounds when something's about to go wrong with the plan. You can make an intelligence or alertness. Oh, some of these traits do have specific like abilities or mechanics to them. Make an intelligence or alertness-based roll to sense trouble even when circumstances might not normally permit it, like when you're dancing at a hoedown. Okay. Reader, that's the universe's versions of psychics. Yeah, realize psychic potential. Okay, so there is magic in the system. A registered companion means you are actively licensed into the companion registry, which legally permits you to do business throughout the system. This trait, oh, in italics, this trait is only available with GM approval as it may not match all campaigns. So we are very clearly in black ink stating, hey, we realize that not everybody's going to want to have prostitutes in the campaign, even though that was a big part of the show. That was one of the main characters, was a registered companion. Religiosity. So like Shepherd Book was, how many religions were there? How many like faiths were there in the most? It says right here, most folk in the verse are either Buddhist or Christian, though many other faiths exist in smaller numbers. I would expect, because the main language is a pidgin between English and Cantonese, I would expect like the faiths of, like faith would evolve over many hundreds of years, especially being out in the universe. Like, I would expect a blend between Christianity and Buddhism, like a weird fusion religion to have come through. Didn't the Dune books did that, didn't they? To some And what was that show on Netflix? Altered Carbon did that to some extent. But no, here we're saying that Christianity and Buddhism just kind of exist. Oh, and we're mentioning monks, rabbis. Okay, so like all of the earth religions are still out there in some form. That's what we're saying here. And we're just lumping it all under this one trait. A sharp sense, because you have the nose of a bloodhound, the eyes of an eagle, or taste buds of a wine. Nobody is taking sharp sense and picking taste buds. They're just not. Pick one of the 5 senses: smell, touch, sight, taste, or hearing. You gain a 2-step bonus to your alertness for any action utilizing that sense. Nobody is taking the tongue version of this. Everybody's taking ears or eyes. There are some character concepts where I might see a character taking nose, like sniffing out trouble, but not. I know I'm calling BS on this. Nobody's taking this the taste version of that. Steady, calm, sweet, and cheerful. Love that. I think the character that I played had that, because I think I based the character that I played, the one time I played this, maybe only the one session I played this, I think I played, I kind of based them on the character Kaylee from the show. Talented, what are we saying here? You pick one skill specialty, and you get a +2. So this is a specialty you already have, or is this granting you a specialty? You must be picking a specialty you already have, because otherwise you're spending points on buying a trait where you could have just spent the points on buying a specialty. Things go smooth because you're lucky. Total recall because you got perfect memory. Tough as nails. You get extra life points. Trustworthy gut. You've learned to trust your hunches. Two-fisted. You're a Jing Chai switch hitter, able to right, pitch, and use a weapon with either hand equally well. Comes in handy during softball games and shootouts. Ambidextrousness, that's one of those things that was in a lot of games back in the day as being valuable, but it comes up at the table just never. And I feel like it's been a lot of years since I've seen ambidextrous listed as something you could spend points on in a book like this. Like D&D 5th edition has all kinds of rules about how many open hands you have and what you can carry in a hand and how many actions you can take depending on what you're carrying and what you can and can't do with your hands, but it never specifies it has to be a particular hand. It's just enough to know that you've got 2 hands. Here's another one I don't think anybody probably ever took ever. You always just know what time it is. You have a good idea of how much time has passed between one action and another. See, nobody's going to take that. That's just information the GM's going to give you. Just to keep the game moving, you have to have a sense of how much time has passed, because you're not playing the game at 1 second per second. You have to know, like, if you're switching a scene. Like, yeah, I just don't see this as something anybody's ever going to take. Where's a badge? If you represent the law. The law are the bad guys in this series, but you can go ahead and play one if you want. Okay, complications. So these will give you attribute points to spend on your character for each one of these you buy. How many am I allowed to take? Here's the line: complications provide great role-playing hooks, and a few faults make your character more believable. That's true at a role-playing table, absolutely true, but is there any mechanical reason why it's good for your complications to come into play? Because we saw a rule earlier, you can buy them away with level-up points. Here we're reiterating. Remember, it's your job to portray specific faults in play. Playing it out as a minor fault can be worth a plot point all on its own. Got it. So if you... So 2 ways you can read this. Either a GM will be like, you played your complication well in that scene, here have a plot point, and then you get another plot point. Or more likely what happens, like at the end of a session, the GM will be like, all right, who wants to claim some plot points? Like, what complications did you play up? I have a, strawberry lemonade in my Jack Skellington and Sally glass tonight. Okay, so I've got allergy, amorous. This is interesting. Sex might not be the only thing on your mind, but it definitely ranks up there at the top. Because 1 page ago, we're saying that, like, the sex-themed stuff may not match all campaigns, so ask your GM. But for this, we're just letting it in. So, like, we're okay with some sex stuff, but not all sex stuff. Okay. Amputee. What are the mechanical drawbacks for this? You can't perform any action that requires use of 2 hands. If you don't have a leg, you make use of crutches, a cane, or a crude prosthetic to walk. Okay, that's fine. That makes sense. This is the kind of thing, and it's saying it's a minor inconvenience. I guess that's true. In like a futuristic setting, your prosthetic would be good enough in most situations, but we're in a setting where like technology is in a constant state of breaking down and needing maintenance and being repaired. That's fine. I think I would take a character who's an amputee. I can't remember the name of the game. I remember reading a game around this time in their list of flaws where it had paraplegic and quadriplegic as flaws you could buy for your character. And we just had to joke about it at the table. We can't. How could you have a quadriplegic character in a game like this, where like it's about shooting and swashbuckling and high adventure and whatnot? Like, yeah, I just don't see it. I don't think this game does that. You're a bleeder. You're blind. What's the penalty here? So this is saying you're completely blind. You might have a trained animal to assist you, though its training has limits and you're responsible for its care. Oh, we've got artwork here. This isn't just a screen grab from the show. So we've got artwork of what looks like a registered companion with her service animal. I kind of love that. So branded, you're a bad person and everyone knows it. Cool. Chip on your shoulder. Credo, you live by a set of principles and you're not to deviate from them. So if you're playing Batman, you have a credo. Combat paralysis. This would be tricky in a game like this. There's the big lie of a lot of RPGs is that we're not focusing the game on combat. But in game terms, combat requires a lot of rules, no matter how you slice it, or it's going to come across as either unweighty or unfair. And once you have rules for combat in a game, there's going to be a lot of incentive to include it in the design of the game, especially a game like this, where the characters are constantly in shootouts and like chasing each other around and getting into fist fights, getting tortured by gangsters, like shooting at each other in starships. Like, combat's a major element of this game. And it says it's a major complication. You can buy this as a major or a minor. When combat begins, you're unable to take any actions for a D2 turns. Wow. That is not fun. That's not what I was expecting that to say. Because it could take up to 5-10 minutes at a table to resolve 2 turns of combat easily. Depending on how granular you're being and how quickly we're getting through and how everybody knows the rules, obviously, that can go back or forth. But saying that you don't get any actions for 2 turns... like in D&D, when I paralyze a player, like if they're stunned, they're out of combat, even for 1 combat round. That's a huge detriment. This is saying 2 turns. At the GM's discretion, someone with the leadership as an asset might inspire you enough to jolt you to action. As a major trait, you're helpless for a D4 turns, and you can't use plot points to act sooner. So you buy this if you just want a character who never participates in combat. Coward. What do we have both of these for? You're a firm believer in living to fight another day. You've no desire to be a big damn hero. When a fight breaks out, so do you in a cold sweat. When danger strikes, you look for the nearest exit. You suffer a -2 step skill penalty on combat actions when you're in danger. Okay, this is more in line of what I thought this was going to be. I don't think we need this at all, and I think this covers it. If you're just not a combatant character, because this is giving you like a small a little penalty on various rolls, and then still leaving the thing where like you can shake it off or have somebody step in with leadership, or like if you've got a plan going well, or maybe like don't have the penalty kick in until you fail a die roll, or like watch somebody else on. Like, I don't think we need all of this. This is too much, and this alone is pretty big, I think. I would put this on a character and play this character up and be like the skill monkey who tries to like shrink back from combat whenever possible. But I'm trying to think now how often this comes up in this, because I'm always thinking in terms of Wash. Wash is a character in the show. He's the pilot, but he's not a combatant, and he tries to stay out of combat as much as possible. And I think there was like Inara would never jump into combat. Probably Kaylee wouldn't either. So this might be modeling stuff from the show without a lot of thought to how it would work at the table. Anyway, you could be crude, you could be dead broke, you could have a deadly enemy. This is definitely something that's modeling from the show. Because in the show, there's like this operative guy that chases them around and is trying to, does River have this complication? Let's actually take a quick look. I'll bet River actually has this complication. Complication, deadly enemy. It's her first one. River has been pursued by the Alliance government. Yeah, okay, so that's what that is. That's modeling specifically a plot point from the show. You could be deaf, you can have a dull sense, you can be an easy mark. Ego signature. You think you're so damn clever that you invariably leave a token, clue, or some other mark as a calling card at the scene of a crime. I would buy this and just know that it would never come up. If I'm making a character in this game, I'm buying this, and I would just... Because I'll tell you the secret... Your DM is never going to want to do the extra work to put this token and have it actually come back to bite you. And if they did do that, every time you left one, it would start feeling very boring and very artificial very quickly. And also, not every one of your sessions is going to involve you committing a crime. Right? And this is specifically saying at the scenes of your crimes. So what if you're playing a character that's not committing crimes? I don't know. This is better. Filter. Everything that's not nailed down is mine. And anything I can pry loose ain't nailed down. I like that. Forked tongue, greedy. Hero worship. Hooked. Wait, I thought we already covered this. No, we covered like a lightweight alcoholic. And this is saying you've got like an addiction. Okay. Leaky brain pan. That's a great term. Well, here's lightweight. Okay, this is just saying you have a delicate constitution. You get sick easily. You're a little person. You've always been called vertically challenged. Dwarf, midget, small fry. You've heard them all. Okay. I don't know if I would print the word midget in a book from 2005, but apparently they did. With the proper disguise, you might be able to buy the kids' meal at the local restaurant. I might take this too. Wait a minute. You're only 3 to 4 feet tall. Opponents attacking you with a ranged weapon from more than 10 feet away receive a +4 to the difficult. So this is a benefit in some cases and a detriment in others. Your base speed is reduced a little bit. I would take this. I would play a halfling in Firefly. If I were to roll up a character for this today, I would play a halfling who leaves a calling card. Because this is just this is just free points that I can spend elsewhere. It's never going to come into play. And this, I just feel like I'm getting a benefit for this, and it'll be fun to play. You can be loyal, memorable, mute. I see this sometimes in games that have these kind of merit and flaw systems because they feel like they need to model, like, we're having characters with no hands, we have characters that can't see. Mute, though, well, you can play a blind character, you can play a deaf character, you can play a character who's missing a hand or a limb. This is a specific drawback, not just to a character, but to just playing the game. I just don't see any... For me, this would never be fun to play, and I would never want to... having this at a table with a player with a character that has this, I don't think would be fun to run that game either. This is something I think I just would not have in the book. Non-fighting type. Well, wait, why do we have... Okay, this is saying you don't fight because you're a pacifist. You're only willing to engage in violence under the most dire of circumstances. I feel like we can roll this up with coward and combat paralysis all into one thing, and then just give those 3 things as examples for like why you would have the drawback, right? Because these 3 things... I'm misremembering the character, because Wash was kind of a coward. Kaylee had... Did Kaylee or Inara have combat paralysis? And then Shepard Book was the non-fighting type. Paralyzed. Well, there it is. A spinal cord injury nearly ended your life. You do not have the use of your... So you're paraplegic. You spend your life sitting in a wheelchair. Okay. You've got rules for a manual and an electric wheelchair. Like this... I've never played a character like that in a game. And again, I just don't... Because this is a setting where you're doing a lot of action. A lot of combat roles, a lot of shootouts. Like, even if you're not in the fighting action, like, if there's a shootout on the deck, like, maybe Mal and Zoe are the ones doing the shooting, but, like, Kaylee is running down below deck to do something action-y in her scene. Like, she's got to get the engine back online or something. And this is just the kind of detriment that just would not be fun to play at the table. Because these two things, paralyzed and mute, these are things that your entire group is going to have to deal with and work around constantly. So there's one for phobia, portly, prejudice, if you're just a terrible racist. Sadist, they'll let you play a sadist. That's interesting. You love hurting people. This trait is usually reserved for the bad guys. No aspiring big damn hero should ever take it. Hell yes. Exactly. Right. Exactly right. I'm glad they put that in there. I hope there was a discussion at some point where some guy was like, I would like to play a sadist, please. And the GM says, nope, because this is a game about big damn heroes. Put your foot down, game, and just tell the players that they can't be sadists. This is another thing. Like, if one person takes this for their character, every player is going to have to deal with it in every scene. And those kind of drawbacks just aren't fun. So, okay, you can be scrawny, a slow learner, soft, stingy. A straight shooter, so you never have crime. Superstitious. Why is Okay, I understand why superstitious and religiosity are two different things. And I understand why they would frame one as an asset and one as a complication. Philosophically, I'm going to disagree with that. We'll just move on. Things don't go smooth if you're unlucky. Traumatic flashes. That's another one River has. That's why she's on the page here. Twitchy, ugly as sin, weak stomach. Okay, so those are all our flaws. Skills pay the bills. So we've been through our attributes, we've seen our traits, and now we're going to look through our skills. Animal handling. Right up front. There's like, how often is this going to come into play? At least they give you examples of specialties. So specialties for animal handling would be animal training, riding, veterinary, or zoology. Can you imagine playing... Well, if you're in a planet-side adventure, there is a lot of interaction with horses and maybe livestock in some settings. But I feel like you could go many, many sessions without this ever coming into play. Oh, I like this too. It tells you what each difficulty roll... Oh, here we go. Skill levels. Incompetent, novice, competent, expert, professional, master, supreme is above a D12. And then it gives you examples of what each skill success level looks like. So animal handling, an easy success is teach a small domestic dog a simple trick. A hard success would be like teach domestic dogs a complex command like leap and grab the sardine on the pole. What? There's no dolphin trainers. Okay, look. You're going to interface with horses in the Serenity role-playing game. You are never going to interface with dolphins. And then all the way to impossible. Take the lead in the Prime Minister's Derby, riding a sick, blind mule with 3 legs. Cool. So we've got artistry, the specialties, appraisal, cooking, forgery, game designing. Come on, man. An editor would have to take that out. I get why they wrote it in there. It's a fun little joke, but there's no character is going to be a game designer. Painting, photography, poetry, sculpting, writing. This gets a little too granular for my tastes, but I guess the specialties are supposed to be pretty granular, I suppose. So athletics breaks down to climbing, contortion, dodge, juggling, jumping, gymnastics, parachuting, parasailing, pole vaulting, riding, running, swimming, weightlifting. Nobody's taking pole vaulting. That's just not happening. Contortion I could see. I immediately can think of lots of ways a character would be a contortionist and make that useful. So if you're covert, you could be a specialist in camouflage, disabled devices. So we're using wording from like 3rd edition D&D and other OGL games without actually being an OGL game. Disabled devices was a pretty common way to describe like picking locks and disarming traps and stuff in those days. Craft. What are we crafting? Architecture, blacksmithing, carpentry, cooking, leatherworking, metalworking, pottery, and sewing. I just don't see... We're cooking again? Cooking is both a craft and an artistry? That's fair enough. Discipline, concentration, interrogation, intimidation, leadership, mental resistance, morale. Guns. We're fighting. So assault rifles, energy weapons, grenade launchers, gunsmithing I like. But wouldn't that be a craft and not... I guess a specialty could apply in 2 different places. I don't see why it couldn't. You probably still have to buy it twice. So heavy weapons, ships, cannons, and siege weapon counts as heavy weapons. Influence, got administration, counseling, intimidation, leadership again. So we've got some overlap with discipline. Persuasion, politics, seduction, and streetwise. Knowledges, appraisal, cultures, history, law, etc. Linguist. So this is skilled only. And this answers my question from earlier. Arabic, Armenian, French, German, Hindu, Japanese, Latin, Portuguese, Russian, Tagalog, Swahili, Swedish, etc. So just about everybody in the verse speaks English and Chinese to one degree or another. The linguist's skill covers basic familiarity with various languages, though its use won't grant you fluency. I don't understand what purpose this has in the setting. I get that there are probably still people in the setting who speak Japanese or Portuguese as like a historical or cultural value, but there aren't like Japanese communities that all speak Japanese together that you would then have to be able to speak Japanese to converse with. Because in this setting, everybody speaks English and Chinese. So to me, this is more like a historical thing. What are we saying here? We have a basic conversation with an average success, a formidable success, native conversation. See, native conversation is the kind of thing I don't think you'd see in these languages in this setting. Including expressions and colloquialisms. You can translate old historical texts. That I could see being very useful in some cases. And then an impossible success is swearing up a storm in Babylonian. So you can learn Portuguese, but you can't learn Babylonian. Mechanical engineering, again, you can use this skilled only. Medical expertise, again, skilled only. Melee combat weapon, we're saying gloves, knives, nunchaku. Really? We're putting nunchucks in here? Polearms, swords, and whips. There's not a lot of this kind of fighting in the shows. Mostly when they're doing close quarters combat, it's just kind of brawling. I think there was an episode of the show where Mal had to like be in a sword duel, but he didn't know how to sword fight. Perception. So we've got deduction, empathy, gambling, hearing, intuition, investigation, read lips, search, sight, smell, tactics, taste, and tracking. Okay. So yeah, these get very granular indeed in the specialties. We've got performance, pilot, planetary vehicles. So you can drive a car, a boat. We're also putting horse here, horse riding. Ranged weapons, but that aren't guns, would be blowguns, bows, crossbows, darts, grenade, javelin, ranged weaponsmithing, slings, throwing axes, throwing knives. I think this is a trap. I don't think in this setting, if your character is relying on their skill with a bow and arrow in this setting, something has gone incredibly wrong, I feel like. Players who spend points on this are going to be at a distinct disadvantage versus characters who spent their points on guns instead. That's just a truism that's going to be true in every single case forever. So you buy this skill if you have a character concept in mind. Like maybe you're playing Batman, you swore off guns, but like you're giving yourself a purposeful handicap, and the other people on your team that have guns are just going to perform better constantly. You got earth science, historical science, life science, math science. Mathematical sciences. Okay. We've got survival, technical engineering, which is different from mechanical engineering. This is comm systems, computer programming, hacking, demolitions. Okay, I see the distinction. I see what they're doing here. We've got another very blurry screenshot of River again. So unarmed combat. So I would... Boxing, brawling, judo, karate, kung fu, savate. I don't know what savate is. I don't think anybody else does either. Let's ask Google AI. Google AI, what is savate? What is savate? A French method of fighting in which feet and fists are used. It's a kick-punch sport with its own rules and style. It's at least 100 years older than what is otherwise often called kickboxing. What a weird thing to put in this book. If anything, I would expect this to break down, instead of having like boxing, brawling, I would expect this to break down into a bunch of different disciplines of Eastern martial arts, considering how big of a impact that Chinese culture and language have had on this setting. Anyway. Oh, here's a piece of like linguistic that stuck with me ever, because in the show, yeah, Zoe has this line, "Nobody flies like my mister." She always calls her husband her mister, and I started calling people's husbands their misters after watching this show. All right, so he's got a list of skills here. This is just a list of assets, complications, general skills. And we're saying GM approval is required for reader registered companion. Okay, so if I want to run this game, but I don't want people with psychic powers, easy enough to do. Great. Chapter 3, money and gear. We are tracking individual credits. Okay. The coins most often used are made from set weights of silver, gold, and platinum. Sure. Okay. What's the exchange rate here? Oh, we've got exchange rates for credits, dollars, platinum, gold, and silver. So a silver coin is worth 4/100ths of a credit, a dime, 1/10 of a platinum. Okay. The 50 silver makes a gold. 2 gold makes a platinum, and then we're tracking things in dollars, like D&D coins and credits all at once, and we've got to keep coming back to this table over and over and over. I guess I get it. I don't understand why we need to track things in... Well, sometimes games did this. Sometimes games tracked the dollar value of items in the game to kind of give the players a connection between what's in the book and what they might be familiar with in their real life. And I guess it does make sense in the setting, because if you're out like in core territory and like Alliance territory, you'd be doing everything in credits. But then the further and further you go out towards the rim, they're going to be dealing more with bartering, probably more with these coins. Maybe that does make sense, and it's just like a needless complication you've got to put up with in the system. It's not like D&D doesn't have its constant money exchange problems. So you get some amount of money, depending on whether you are normal, a moneyed individual, or dead broke, and depending on whether you're a greenhorn veteran or big damn hero. So a broke big damn hero is like twice as well off as just a normal greenhorn. Okay, that makes sense to me. That makes a lot of sense. Owning a ship. We've assumed that for this game, your characters will crew a ship. Okay. But they don't necessarily own the ship. Somebody else might own the ship and they're just... Right! Okay, I remember now. The book gave you a kind of like faux Serenity to play with. So they created a crew and a ship for you called the Aces and Eights, owned by rich gambler Jack LaLande, who hires Max Williams to captain the boat. They put that in the game. So in case you want to play like the off-brand Serenity crew. Credits and coinage... Okay, so medicine and food are just very, very valuable here. Immediately I see the phrase fire jelly on the tool list, and immediately I am intrigued. Oh, we've got availability. Good, yeah, because different things would be available in different contexts. We have a mechanic for keeping track of how hard it could be to track down fire jelly in a particular place. What is fire jelly? It's sold in 8-inch tall tin cans, designed as an alternative to campfires for soldiers during the Unification War. When lit, the jelly burns at 550. Okay, so it's a way to cook food. Got it. I got food and supplies. You can get real food, or you can get protein paste, or you can get Fruity bars. That was in the movie. Well, there's like a commercial in the movie for Fruity bars, and River saw the commercial. And there was something like subliminal messaging in the commercial, like triggered her brain, and then she killed a bunch of people. Is that what happened? Okay, so we've got some armor here. We're giving armor rating. What does armor rating do? Absorbs wounds. Okay, so if I attack you and you're wearing ballistic mesh, it says it has a one rune weighting. From any attack on an area covered by the suit, but doesn't do much more than that. Protect against knives, bombs, and so on. Ah. It converts wound damage to stun. So, okay, it's kind of like Kevlar then. That's what we're saying. So it will reduce a wound if it's stun damage, but then it'll convert wound damage to stun damage because it'll like deflect a knife or something. Great. Ammunition and reloading. This is always an interesting thing. How do games take care of reloading? We're putting bow and crossbow here on the list, and we're pretending like they're things anybody's going to want. Bow and crossbow does a D4 wound. Pistol does a D6. Rifle does a D8. So the reason we have bows and crossbows in the game is because we're overvaluing how much damage they can do compared to firearms. But they have a worse range increment. Return of fire. Max return. Is that what we're saying here? I would definitely want to track ammunition if I run this game. You could do it more cinematically, I guess. It's giving you two options. So 0.2 credits or 1 gold to buy 10 shots. Cool. For like a typical, for like a weapon like this. For a standard pistol. And then if it's an energy weapon or something, the price could go up from there. Okay. I think I see what all this is saying. And then we've got some weapons can be fire, single shot burst, or auto fire. Rules like that for firearms always get too granular for my tastes. The thing you have to understand is that a lot of these kind of books, especially back in those days, were written by nerds, and there are a lot of gun nerds in the world. I've read through a lot of games that like the system is kind of abstract and maybe even a little loose, but then when it comes to the firearms, it goes really detailed and really granular. Let's see. So we've got different kinds of grenades. Great. Optional rule, simplified weapon damage. Oh, what are we doing here? Having to make a damage roll may seem more complicated than it's worth. The general assumption is that having a damage roll adds more excitement to the game, but they're ray, though. That's misspelled. There's a misspelling in here. They're ray, those. So it should be are those. That's just a typo. Wild. So rather than rolling the damage and adding it to stuns and wounds, it can just, when a hit is scored, just add half the max roll on the weapon's damage die rounded down. So you've made a roll with your gun to attack. So that's your attribute plus skill. Is this saying you add it to that roll? No, you just add it to the die. So it just turns damage into a flat. So a D2 damage weapon, there aren't any,
A D4 damage weapon would deal 2 points of damage. So getting hit by a bow does 2 points of damage. Getting hit by a bullet does 3 points of damage. This is why I don't like this. I just don't think you can... Yeah, getting hit by an arrow is going to kill you, but getting hit by a bullet is going to kill you a lot more surely. I think they're overvaluing how much damage bows and crossbows do. Because bows and crossbows are cool and everybody likes them, and we want to have this setting where it does have kind of Western flavor to it. So we're just going to pretend like the realism elements of how much damage those particular weapons can do compared to the firearms that basically every single character is going to use. We're going to just pretend like they're kind of... There's parity there where there really isn't any. We got heavy weapons, like ship weapons and stuff. Tech shop. What? What are we doing? What are we talking about here? Activating the cortex. Can be accessed by anyone with the right equipment. Is this like gadgetry? Computer hardware and progs. This is not really an element of the show, I don't think. Well, let's just look what we got. We have a Cortex terminal, an illegal terminal designed to interface with Alliance snoops. What other kind of gadgets do we have? Personal access terminal, public access terminal. Okay, so Inara probably had a personal access terminal on her boat. What else do we have? A data library, data book, data disk, encyclopedia. This is all knowledge stuff. This is all just like getting access to the internet. Yeah, these are various types of computers you could get. Okay, so now we're getting into actual, now we're getting like the James Bond gadget stuff. So, short range, long range compact is a backpack sized transmitter capable of sending and reading a range of frequencies. Distress beacon, emergency signal ring, gun scanner, some micro transmitters, ship linked handset, a clunky little walkie talkie handset. Cool, cool. And a signal blocker. You'll love to see that. Okay, then we got some medical equipment here. So this is kind of how we're doing healing in this system. Cryo chamber. Huh. Putting a body in cryo requires giving the person a carefully measured set of injections. Why is this under, like, equipment that players are going to have? Do we have a cost? We do have a cost for it. It's 1,300 credits. Whereas, like, synthetic organs are 18 to 45,000 credits. Okay. I guess that's no different from, like, D&D having a water clock that you can buy. There's a doctor's bag. There's a better doctor's bag. There's a first aid kit, which I'm assuming is another kind of doctor's bag. We've got emergency medical supplies. All kinds of medical supplies here. Great. Covert ops gear. They're getting into the fun stuff. Debugger, disguise kit, eavesdrops, fake IDs, laser light mist. Okay, that makes sense. So you can see where the lasers are. You got lock picks. You got electronic lock picks. Got a mag charge, optical bomb, some different kinds of poison. And then in the engineering supplies, you get a cutting torch, a grav cart. Okay, that makes... This is a grave cart. I'm like, okay, so we're freezing them, and then we're putting them on a slab. No, this is grav cart. So this is Tensor's floating disk. I always love to see Tensor's floating disk in any game, so I'm glad to see that that's here. And we got some toolkit stuff. Robots. How big are robots in this setting? Like, there's not any robot characters. Let's get one thing straight. There aren't any thinking robots in the verse. Okay, yeah, you're not going to have like R2-D2. So what are we talking about then? Oh, okay, we're talking about, like, this is like it's a love bot. I have a commitment to my love bot. It was a very beautiful ceremony. Lenore wrote her own vows. I cried like a hungry, angry baby. I don't remember this character at all. But he has his love bot, and God bless him. Okay. So you can get a love bot. You can get this guy's like an excavator. It was like a household assistant. Okay, fair enough. New tech. New tech is Oh, this is modifiers. You get a new tech modifier, and then they increase the cost, and they give you. So we have like reading glasses that act like a full computer. Cool. And we got services, and we have companion here. But again, no note that companions are not acceptable for all campaigns. So we're accepting that companions are just a thing in the universe, and saying that it's not always acceptable for a player to be one. Is that what we're doing? Great. So we created characters, and they have gears, boats, and mules. So this is ships. In the 900 years since folk dreamed about traveling to other worlds, all kind of fantasy inventions. We had to pick just one invention to be the grand unification of the theories of gravity and electromagnetism. So we can control gravitic attraction and inertia in small spaces. Fantastic. I'm just kind of skimming to see if they explain in detail how it works, because this is the kind of thing I don't think they ever explain in the show. It's just kind of weird. We're not going to have a show if there's no gravity, so we're just going to take for granted that there's artificial gravity. We can create gravity fields if we need to. Fusion power is nothing new, right? Propulsion. So we're using rocket thrusters, so we need fuel to move. And then life support. So these are like 3 different kinds of power that you need on your ship. You need fusion power to run everything, you need fuel for propulsion, and then you need something for life support to generate oxygen and air for yourself. And as I remember correctly, this is done through like algae tanks throughout the ship's hull. Oh, here we go. A ship's hull. It's right here. It's more than a box to hold her parts. It's a giant air tank, right? Waste heat and comm signals have to go out through the hull, and sensor data has to go in. So some sections of a hull are transparent to specific kinds of radiation. These are all things that I feel like are questions that might come up at the start of one of these campaigns. And like you might pick one of these to create a kind of singular story or adventure around, which is precisely what the show Firefly would have done back in the day. And then for the most part, you just ignore all of this. For the most part, you just assume that all of this is taken care of, right? For the same reason why in like modern D&D, you typically don't track how many rations you have. All right, so we've got communication sensors, waste management. The ship is up and running. Here we go. Weapons for our ship. We got space mines, missiles, bombs, cannons, warheads. Do we have lasers in this setting? Do we have energy weapons? I don't remember. So we got kinetic warhead as a bullet, explosive warhead, canister warhead, an EMP, and then a jammer to like chaff to cut off signals. A decoy warhead, and a nuclear warhead. Fantastic. I can't remember if we've got lasers or not in this setting. I feel like no, because I feel like they really wanted to push like the kind of Derringer 6-shooter style Western shootout, right? And I don't remember if energy weapons were actually a thing. A daily routine. I like this a lot. This is probably good setting and lore stuff that you'd want to read through. So they got operating costs. This is everything you need to pay. On a ship, you're paying fort fees, you're buying fuel, you're getting provisions. So they don't have like matter printers on these ships. A sci-fi game that came out today, I would expect there to be rules for there being like a way to like synthesize proteins and then print them into edible matter, and you wouldn't need to actually take on provisions. These are technologies we almost have today on Earth. 3D printing technology and stuff, but that wasn't that big in 2005, and it wasn't a part of Firefly as a setting. Another instance of kind of classical sci-fi not keeping pace with technology is there would be no sense of characters having like cell phones in this setting, because early aughts, nobody had, I mean, some people had cell phones, but we hadn't like built an entire generation of communication around them yet. That's a really interesting aspect of like modern fiction writing that is being dealt with in a lot of interesting ways, is how much cell phone technology has changed the way we communicate with each other and how often communication is required in works of fiction and how writers are dealing with that. Super, super interesting topic. Today is not the time to go into it. So this is saying some ways you can make money. You can haul freight. You can carry passengers from one way to another. So like River and her brother Simon were originally passengers on Mal's ship, and then they became full members of the crew. Charter, so you can... Like Inara is the registered companion. Like she's leasing out one of the, I think, escape vessels of the ship. And she's paying rent. This is how long it takes to get between places. Let's just take a look at this. Between moons of the same planet, between 1 and 600 hours. Using a reaction drive. Oh, okay, that makes sense. So if you're just using your let's go back to power generation here. If you're just using your fusion generator on your ship to propulse yourself, you're going between moons in between 1 and 600 hours. So this is like if you're traveling from like Ganymede to Callisto, right? And then to go any further than that, or maybe even from like Earth to Earth's moon, right? If you're going any further distance than that, you're using your fuel as propulsion. And then that trip takes between 1 and 20 hours. Oh, and they give calm lag here. I kind of love that. So between planets and adjacent systems, you're looking at 500 hours to 2,500 hours and a calm lag of 1 to 4 hours. That's really cool. I'm glad that they have all this information right here in that table. I think I would look at that frequently. That would be, I could design an entire session around this idea of like being in an emergency situation and having like a 1 hour calm lag between you and the people who are trying to help you solve the situation. That would be cool. Ship as a character. This is actually a big, big element of Firefly as a show. I think Whedon has said in many, many different interviews and stuff, like he always considered Serenity, like the ship's name is Serenity, to be a major character in the show. And so what they've done here is they've translated the ship into having the same attributes as people do. So your ship has agility, strength, vitality, alertness, intelligence, and willpower. So, okay. Agility is how maneuverable you are. So a slow Alliance cruiser or like a hummingbird fighter. I don't know that I can picture what a hummingbird fighter is. So strength, we're saying a small strength ship is like an escape pod or a one-man shuttle. And then this Alliance cruiser would be a high-strength ship. The vitality of a ship is how... Okay, so this is just the ship's like hit points. So a low vitality ship is barely holding together. D12 would be fresh off the line model or design that has auto repair systems built in. So probably the Serenity itself was hovering around a D4 for most of the series. That's probably the case. Alertness. So this is your navigation, sensors, and communications. Okay, and then intelligence we're saying is control, navigation, and guidance. We're getting into some overlap here because we're like speed, strength, vitality. Those things are really easy to translate over into a ship. And then this we're starting to hit the blinds a little bit. Willpower is redundancy and safety margins built into the ship's design. We're kind of reaching and covering the same ground multiple times here, but as long as the mechanics work, I guess it's fine. All right, so we can have some other ways we can describe a ship by dimensions, tonnage, speed, class, fuel capacity, where are the crew quarters, how much cargo can we hold. A ship's got quirks, just like people do. Excellent. Is it all the same quirks? No, it's different quirks. Some of them are the same. So Allure, Branded, Cortex Spectre, Dull Sense, Good Name, Healthy as a Horse, Hooked, Lightweight, Memorable, Ugly as Sin are all, like, characters can have those quirks. But everybody has one as a complication. Fast Throttle, Fuel Efficient, only Gas Guzzler is a complication. I like this one, Loved. The crew feels a deep connection with their boat. That's an asset. Can we get it? Here we go. The ship knew it was loved from the day the crew first saw her. Members of the crew can spend plot points from their personal pool for roles whenever the ship's attributes or skills are called into use even if their characters aren't directly involved. I love it. This is great. And it's especially great in this setting, considering how important the Serenity was to the setting. And like all the characters in the show, especially Mal and Zoe, were like always on record as like Serenity is like their best friend. And there is one episode in particular where like the ship is dying, and it's one of the best. I gotta rewatch this show, I guess. But yeah, the ship is like dying, and they're out in deep space, and there's no help anywhere. And Mal is like pulling every trick in the book just to keep it together. And part of it's because of he feels his loyalty to his crew, like they're all counting on him to get them there safe. But also because he just doesn't want the ship to die. So like, you if you've never seen the show, it's very much like a Han Solo's relationship to the Millennium Falcon kind of thing. And you can imagine a lot of scenes in the Star Wars where you definitely can tell Han and Chewie are making this loved role and spending their own plot points. Ship skills. So we're limiting skills to athletics, covert, heavy weapons, knowledge. Okay, this makes more sense now, because heavy weapons was listed as a character skill, and it was listing things like rocket launchers and grenade launchers. And I was thinking that's like how well they could use ship weapons. But no, the ship actually has a different meaning for heavy weapons. Automatic targeting. So, okay, you need to have a character with this heavy weapons skill to properly fire from the ship. If the ship has like a mounted cannon or something, like a torpedo launcher or something. But then if the ship also has this heavy weapons skill, automatic targeting. So can the ship then fire without somebody at the helm? That'd be cool. Complexity. What are we saying this is? Complexity measures the overall capabilities, integration, and expense of a ship's systems. Total all the points used for attributes, skills, and traits. Okay, so this, instead of having like hero points that they spend on attributes and stuff, you can say a ship has an average complexity, so it's got 32 points. That's how you so this is how you design a ship. You decide how complex the ship is. That'll determine how much it costs, and that gives you how many points you can spend on its attributes and skills. And then we've got, and then it's got life points and initiative, just like characters do. Great. Maintenance. Changing filters, replacing worn out or damaged parts. Let's see. Monthly maintenance costs. So you make a roll each month, and then that roll determines how much maintenance was required that month. So success on the roll, you're paying the regular maintenance cost. An extraordinary success, you're cutting it in half. And if you botch it, it's twice as expensive. This might be from that episode I'm thinking of when the ship is dying, Kaylee and Mal. Everything's shiny, Captain, not to fret. You told me entry couplings would hold for another week. That was 6 months ago, Captain. Got it. Okay, weapon systems. Ships have armor. Cool. So here's like the I kind of love this map, I'm not going to lie. I forgot that this book had full of these maps. And I do kind of love it a lot. So this is kind of the like, okay, people who buy this game aren't literally going to want to play the characters of Serenity on the Serenity. So this is kind of their like, here's a sort of Serenity adjacent ship, but it's like owned by a professional gambler. So it's got like gambling tables and stuff in it. The aces and eights. And then we've got several other floors here. Oh, I love maps like these. I could look at maps like these all day. And then we've just got sample ships. So there's the Hotaru is the type of ship that the Serenity is, I think. A Firefly class. Yeah, because the ship was called Serenity, but it was a Firefly class transport from the war. Cool. And then the aces and eights is what we're just looking at here. There's an escape pod as a ship. Short range shuttle. Some Alliance stuff. Here we go. Here's a Monroe wagon. Oh, here's this would be the Serenity itself then. We got a cross site. This is the Monroe wagon. What's the Monroe wagon? Let's figure that out first. Bumblebee class, homestead transport. Okay, so if you're colonizing a new planet, you would load up a population and some amount of personnel and cargo on this Monroe wagon, then send them to their destination where they can put down a colony. Okay, so here's the Firefly. And this literally is the Serenity. So we've got the map of the Serenity here. Of course, they gave it a full 2-page spread. Of course, it's right in the center of the book. Like, if you just grab this book off the shelf back in the day and just let it fall open in your hands, it's the first thing you see. Which might literally have been what happened and why I own it. Who knows? I was really into this show back in the day. So yeah, the Serenity has 2 escape shuttles. Inara has one and has turned it into, like, her little bordello. Great. We've got all the... Okay, we've got all the dimensions and specifications for the Serenity. You can add some... Okay, I see what they're doing here. So you can say that this is a... Like an all-cargo ship can carry more tonnage, but has no shuttles or passenger space. So you can... They're modular. You can customize your ships as needed. And then we've got some... There's an Alliance patrol boat... Oh, here we go. I like this. The Alliance patrol boat. I could just look at these maps for hours. I really could. Worth the price of admission. I don't always buy tabletop books with the expectation that I'm going to run the game. Sometimes I just buy the books because I like having the books. And this would be a reason to just have the books, I think, because I love these ships. Okay, so we're still looking at different... Okay, we've got land vehicles now. More maps. What is this? Amphitheater? So this is like a theater ship? Is this the Tantalus is what we're looking at here? And then little tiny... This is tiny. It's just a smaller scale map. Oh, now we're down to the land vehicle. So hover mule, hovercraft, a skiff. So this is stuff you'd have. Yeah, like this is a reverse skiff. So this is something they would. No, they had these out in space. I think the idea is that these were designed to be planet-side vehicles. You can see how small these are because these 10-foot squares are enormous. This is a very small vehicle. I think the idea is that these were designed to be planet-side vehicles, but the Reavers use them in space, which is extremely dangerous. Because they don't have like the proper shielding or whatever. But I think Reavers just don't care about that. I think that was the in-universe explanation for why Reavers are using vessels like these out in space. Okay, we've got spaceship and vehicle combat. What do we just scale? Aha, scaling up. I see. Let's see here. So what we're saying here is we're measuring distance on different scales depending on where we're fighting. Like 2 ships shooting at each other can be at a scale that doesn't make sense for people who are on Earth shooting at each other. And then we can mix scales. This might... So you got like a personal scale. Vehicle scale is 10 times greater than that. So 2 vehicles in a dogfight are... The rules for like range and damage and stuff work at a scale 10 times greater. I think that makes sense. I think that's okay. Playing the game. So this is going to be the basic, here's how you play. This is the game in a nutshell here. Attribute plus skill equals result. When someone tries to do something, he rolls the appropriate dice and generates a total. High numbers generally mean success. Low numbers indicate failure. The game situation and the number rolled give the game master a starting point to describe how a given action plays out. So there are degrees of success, and here it gives the action difficulty. So an average difficulty action is a 7, easy is 3, and then it scales up from there. Very, very, very of the time. This was super, super common because of 3rd edition and the OGL. Great. Extraordinary success. Okay, so this is the difficulty you have to hit. So you're making an average difficulty roll, and you Make it a 7 or an 8, you get a regular success. If you make it a 14, you get an extraordinary success. Is this always just ordinary plus? Yeah, this is just ordinary plus 7. Oh, it gives the formula right here. Great. So extraordinary successes are better. Some actions the crew... Oh, this is cool. Some actions the crew might attempt don't require skill at all. These are tests of a character's raw attributes. And you can add 2 together. Why am I coughing so much? Were there 2005 hantaviruses stuck in this book that I've released back into the atmosphere by opening it? Okay, so if you're just doing a burst of strength, you can just strength plus strength and make that roll. Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense to me. There's a difference between just something that requires raw strength versus something that requires, in D&D terms, say a strength athletics roll. That distinction does make sense to me. Skilled and unskilled actions. So we've already seen that distinction. Sometimes you can make an unskilled action, sometimes you can't. Botching. In game turns, you've rolled a botch. A botch happens when all the dice you rolled come up as 1s. You're typically rolling 2 dice. So that's not going to be all the time, but it will happen from now on. When something bad happens, the GM has free reign to be both creative and fun-loving as to just what this failure means in the story. And then it gives some examples. Jane attempts to be on his best behavior at a social engagement, but he rolls all 1s on his dice. He intends to pass the gravy boat, but passes gas instead. Okay. Fair enough. So we're not attaching... Oh, yeah, we are sometimes attaching mechanical drawbacks to this. Zoe lifts the butt of her hog leg to smash a drunk's face, but she rolls all 1s. The sawed-off shotgun slips out of her hands and goes flying across the room. This is from the show. All alone on... It's from that episode when the ship was dying, and he sent everybody out in the escape pods, and he's alone on the ship. Captain's going down with his ship. He tries to replace a crucial engine part, but he botches his roll. He drops the part through the grating and has to go down below to retrieve it. That's a scene right out of the show that I remember very vividly. Complex actions. So these are actions over time. Complex actions have a difficulty threshold too high to succeed in one roll, but you can roll multiple times and then keep going until you hit it. That's fair. Something like picking a lock could be a complex action. Like I said, a difficulty threshold to 55, and you've got to keep making the check until you hit it. This sometimes gets modeled badly in various editions of D&D. I've seen them do things like this a few times. D&D just doesn't work like that. But there are specific cases where I could use something like this. And this is kind of... I've seen this before. This is common in games of the era. Life gets easier or the job gets harder. Are we saying here we go up or down a step because we were giving like advantage, disadvantage kind of thing? I guess. This is how we're gaining plot points. Complications can give you plot points. We've already covered that. Here's plot points. This is it here. Plot points are your experience in the game. And experience is your character advancement. Character advancement has to be tied to gameplay. So characters can keep advancing and getting stronger and taking on bigger challenges. So let's see what we have an idea. You get 1 plot point when you do something cool. Player comes up with a great idea and engages in some superior role-playing or just does something so goram cool it must be acknowledged. Tell us about plot point to encourage that sort of thing. I don't like this, and I never have. I don't like it in 5th edition when it says give inspiration to players who do something cool. As a DM, I don't want to be the person in charge of deciding what things are cool enough to be rewarded and what things are not. And as a player, I don't want to be in a constant state of feeling like I have to keep doing cool things. Because here, this always goes a couple ways. Like, when players are getting into this mindset of we have to keep doing cool things, it gets exhausting fast as players are constantly trying to one-up each other. And then you get into situations where, like, what if a player does something that they thought was cool, but the GM didn't think it was cool, so didn't reward the point? Doesn't reward the point. Should the player speak up? Be like, hey, I did a cool thing. Then the GM's in a case where they got to either be like, yeah, okay, I guess you can have one. Or they'll go like, nah, it wasn't that cool. And neither of those things feels very good for the player, right? I really wish games would get away from stuff like this, but this has always been popular in tabletop games, and I personally don't enjoy it. If I was going to run this game today, I would not give these points for cool stuff. I would find some way to codify that. Like what I would do, just off the cuff, off the top of my head, I would give everybody every player at the table one plot point that they could give to another player during the course of the game, with the expectation that players would just make sure they all start and end the session with a plot point. That way they all feel like they get to do something, they all feel like they got rewarded for doing anything cool, and then I didn't have to make any dumb judgment calls. Anyway, the other ones look fine. Like we've got one, complication comes into play. You get 1 to 3 points. Completing a challenge. So like if you overcome a significant obstacle, like Mal botches his roll, drops a thing, has to go below deck to find the thing. He's completed a challenge. Personal goal is the character achieves an important personal goal in the current story. So like Jane has kicked his cocaine habit, I guess. I don't know if he's doing cocaine on the Serenity. I've got no idea. Then a crew goal. So this would be when at the end of the adventure, everybody gets 4 to 6 points. This is all fine. I'm okay with all of this. I would like to see why. Oh, wait a minute. We're playing the pronoun game here. Complication in play. A character's complication makes life more difficult for her. We're switching which one we're using as the neutral pronoun. That was actually, I saw that, I think White Wolf books did that a lot back in the day. What are we going, chapter by chapter here, or just, no, because we just use him over here. Are they just alternating in examples? Just use they, guys. Use they, them. Works fine. It works perfectly fine. The grammar police are not going to arrest you. Well, or are we doing it in a sense where like when we're referring to the player, it's a him, and we're referring to the character, it's a her? Because this is a character, this is a player, him and her. I don't know what they're doing. But okay, if your complication comes into play, you get a point. If you do something difficult, you get a point. Complete a personal goal, you get a point. Crew completes a goal, you get a point. That's your experience. That's how you level up. It's also your reroll mechanics. So you can spend these points on rerolls, or you can spend them on leveling up. Not rerolls, adding rolls to your rolls. Okay. Improving actions. So you spend plot points on a roll. This is what I'm just talking about. Spend plot points on an action roll. You gain an extra die depending on how many plot points you spend. Okay. And then it gives you the rule that I mentioned I didn't like earlier, spending them after the fact. I would house rule this just to say that plot points are always after the fact. You roll, you've seen that you failed, and then you can make the decision, do I eat the failure or do I spend some plot points on this? And to me, that is a much, much, much more interesting decision than I really need to make this roll. Should I spend plot points on this and risk losing them if I pass the roll? If you make the roll and see that you fail and then spend some plot points and still fail the roll, that to me feels better than if you spend the plot points up front and then make the roll and then succeed and didn't need to use the plot points. Does that make sense? Because in the first case, you're making a roll, so you've got your chance to pass. You failed. That's fair. Everybody fails some rolls. And then you decide to spend some plot points, and then you roll again. There's your second chance to make the pass. If you fail that, again, that's fair. Everybody fails rolls sometimes. But the other way around, you haven't made an interesting decision, and then you just regret spending the points. I could see a lot of cases where, like, if I failed a roll that I spent plot points on, I would still feel, like, vindicated in choosing to spend the points because it was the correct choice to make. Staying alive. Oh, I think we're coming up with my favorite rule in the game. There's one rule in this game that I absolutely love, and I think it's going to be in this section. There will come times during a game when you'll want your character to not be dead. So plot points can be spent to reduce damage, as we've covered. You can use plot points to deal with the damage, but you have to do so as soon as the GM announces it. You can't go back later and decide you would like to reduce. So you can reduce the damage being dealt, but you cannot spend the plot points to heal a wound you already have. That's perfectly fair to me. I think that's absolutely fair. You have to decide in the moment, again, do I want to eat this damage or do I want to spend the plot points to buy it away? That to me is an interesting decision. All right, so we've got covering your assets. So plot points are also used as currency to activate certain assets. Okay. Story manipulation. This could get interesting quick. Let me just skim this real quick. Plot points give you the power to change the storyline in small ways. This is often done to your character's advantage and should always be done to make life more interesting for your characters and the crew. So this is a director mechanic. Director mechanics would be like a way for the player to grab control of the game for a moment in a way that is usually reserved for the GM. Let's just look at the examples here. So if I spend 1 to 3 plot points for an inconsequential... The bartender is a former independent. I'm sure he won't mind a fellow browncoat running up a large tab. Okay, so we're saying the GM has set up a scene. You're going into this bar. Guy behind the bar might be expecting trouble. I'm going to spend a plot point and say the bartender's got our back if we need him, if things go down. If I spend 4 to 6, I completely forgot I'd hid that 100 credit note in my boot. Yep, very common. In games that have this kind of mechanic is just like spawning resources in, right? That like your character has an extra clip or like a debit card or just something that you have access to equipment that's not on your character sheet and you spend points to just get access to it. Oh, I found it under my hat. Significant, 7 to 10 points. Roscoe, I ain't seen you since reunion back on Shadow, so you're a federal marshal now. How you been, old buddy? So this is just a bigger version of this, I guess. And then Major for 11 points. We've been drifting through the black without power for nigh on to 2 days. Amazing that your ship just happened by this out-of-the-way spot. That happened in that same episode. So the Serenity's dying. All the systems are off. Mal knows that everybody's going to... like he sends them off in the escape pods, knowing that there's no way to save them. He can make their... emergency signal go that much further out just as a Hail Mary, but then he does encounter a ship. These guys, he's alone on the ship and they come in and they're like pirates and now he has to fight them off. So he spent 11 plot points to make that happen. I like that. I like when I'm able to go through a licensed RPG when I'm familiar with the setting and see how the rules interact with what I know about the setting. Great. So this is actually fine. I don't mind mechanics like this. If I were ever to actually design an RPG, I would include a mechanic like this. I usually don't include mechanics like this when I run Dungeons & Dragons. I did in a couple campaigns. In the first 2 D&D campaigns I did on this channel, we had bananas. And like you earned a banana in a session, you could spend a banana to do exactly this. But what ended up happening is it got too crazy. And I wanted to not do it anymore. Although one of the bananas that they, in the very first campaign, spent a banana just to introduce gunpowder into the setting. And then gunpowder was, or we called it dragon powder, was part of the setting for the subsequent 32 sessions or whatever we did. Combat. Okay, so what are we doing? We're rolling initiative. You have your action. Every action beyond the first on a turn brings a cumulative -1 step penalty to all actions on a turn. So you can take as many actions as you want, but each action you try to take reduces the step. And if you go to below a D2, you lose that action. So it's not infinite. And it's a cumulative. So the first action you take is normal. The second action has a -1 step, so it drops a D6 down to a D4. The next action, 2 actions bring a -1 step penalty. 3 actions minus... Wait, was this cumulative or not? Because if it's cumulative, the second action is to take -3, right? because the first one should cost a -1 step, and the second should cost a -2 step on top of the -1 step you already took. I guess that's not how I'm supposed to read it, because they give the example. 2 actions bring a -1 step penalty, 3 actions -2, etc. That doesn't seem cumulative to me. That just seems iterative. But okay, they give the it's clear because they give the example of how it's supposed to work. And it says maybe don't try not to do things unskilled. Free actions. Not everything you do counts as an action against you. You can take a quick look around the room, speak or holler a short phrase, drop to the ground. All these are considered free actions. Great. Okay, so here we're saying, giving some options. So initiative, you're supposed to roll initiative every single round. Rolling initiative every combat round sounds horrifying nowadays, but back in the day, a lot of games did that. So this is saying maybe you can just roll initiative once and then use it. They're saying there's merry-go-round style. What's this saying? Everyone goes in the same order each turn. So this is just like you roll initiative and then you keep that initiative for the whole thing. And if you sit out an entire turn trying to get their bearings, you can re-roll your initiative roll to get a new place in the order. So this is what 5th edition uses. And then action as initiative. Instead of a separate initiative roll, everybody rolls the first action of the turn. If the actions do not normally involve a die roll, the player rolls agility plus alertness. This roll serves as both initiative and the result of the first action, with secondary actions resolved normally with separate rolls. But then how does your initiative stat give you any kind of benefit? I'm not seeing it. Not seeing the not seeing the value of this. And then it's saying instead of letting one person resolve their action and their secondary action and their tertiary, if they're taking multiple actions, do all of the first actions, then all of the second actions, and so on. I think that's probably either way is fine. I think. Honestly, I would want to just do it this way. You address one player until that player's turn is completely over, and then you address the next player. And if you do it that way, you don't have to keep track of how many rounds you're in. Whereas if you go with this optional rule here, you have to know both the turn and the round. You've got to do a full round of actions, and then you've got to do a second round within that round of secondary actions. And some of those players will just be sitting there not doing anything, and they don't get addressed at all. I wouldn't do it this way. We got movement. We got defending yourself. Rules for cover. We're increasing the difficulty of people shooting you. You can defend, block, dodge, go all-out defense. Inflicting violence is always a good heading to see in a game. Aim, all-out attack, called shot, limb shot, vital area, minuscule target, disarm, feint, grapple. Sneak attack, thrown weapon. Love that. This all seems like it worked fine. Everything just seems like it keys off of the attribute plus trait. I don't think the dice system for this was very complicated at all. Special situations is where you got your single shot burst and auto fire. Keeping your eyes covered. Threatening someone when you're dead to rights. Okay. Oh, okay. I like this actually. So if you're threatening somebody, pointing a gun at them, holding a knife to them, whatever. You take a free attack action outside the normal initiative order at a +2 step skill bonus. And it doesn't, in fact, affect how you act next turn. So basically, you can hold somebody kind of hostage in battle if you've got the draw on them. And I guess nobody is threatening you in turn. Like I don't think you could do this during a combat scene. I think. Breaking stuff. So we have rules for breaking stuff. So handcuffs, a door, rope, standard door. We're giving each one armor and life points. Nice and simple. Firing into a crowd is something big damn heroes should probably never do. Obscured vision. Okay, so you can't shoot what you can't see. Sometimes the lights go out. So dim light, thin smoke, or fog. +4 to difficulty to hitting any target 10 feet away. Dark, thick smoke or fog. +8 difficulty, and pitch black when you can't see anything. So what are we saying here? I've skimmed through this twice. I'm not sure what we're saying. If you can't see anything, any type of ranged attack has only a small chance of hitting a target, and that's assuming you have a rough idea of its location. Any potential target must make a normal or innate defense roll against an easy difficulty. Failure means they're hit. What? So in D&D terms, what we're saying here is, in dim light or in like darkness, I'm rolling to hit you at a penalty, but in pitch black, complete blindness, no vision whatsoever, you have to make the saving throw against me. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I like that. Because you're going to fail that sometimes. I don't know. I don't like that this is handled differently mechanically from this. Like, I would just... Not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure how I would handle this. I would still want the attacker to make the roll. Would I just increase the advantage? Like, bring it up instead of this +8 in dark? Like, that's already really, really difficult. Because what if the person is like... What are we saying here? Innate defense roll. What is innate defense? If you're too busy bringing on the hurt to worry about actual defensive maneuvers, moving around is still better. So you're kind of doing defensive maneuvers. You're an easy target at close range. So, okay. Your innate defense does determine how hard you are to hit. So they're trying to hit that target, and this is saying that in those cases, you're rolling based on that same attribute. I still don't want the defender to roll in this case, though. Yeah, I'm not sure. Prone, unstable terrain. 0 gravity. Cool. What are we doing here? Before you take an action during the turn, you must succeed on an average roll using the Survivor's 0G skill or some other skill reflecting experience in such an environment. If you fail, you suffer a -2 step penalty. That's fine. I'm okay with that. And I would definitely want to have some 0G encounters if I was running this game. So stun and wounds, we've seen the difference between stun and wounds. Determine basic damage. Attack minus defense is basic damage. So your innate defense is 3, I guess. What's all this? Passing out. If your total damage from both stun and wounds equals your life points, you're out. Shock points. When a character receives stun damage after falling unconscious, the additional stun is recorded as shock points. An unattended character with shock points is unconscious for 1 hour. After that, he may make an average endurance check once per hour to reduce the shock points by 1. Medical treatment can speed that up. So if you get knocked out, it takes some amount of checks to come back. That's fine. Wound penalty. Blood is pouring out of your mouth and a reaver harpoon is sticking through your leg. When your wounds are equal to or greater than half your life points, you're seriously wounded and suffer a -2 step penalty to all attributes. Ooh, okay. And then dying when your wound damage equals or exceeds your life points. So tracking 2 different types of damage in systems like this is actually very easy to do. The standard way is to do like a slash for the stun damage, and then you can turn that slash into an X if it turns into a wound later. I think in this system, though, you'd never turn stun into a... Well, no, that can't be the case. Because what if you take more than half your health is stun, and then the rest is wound? We're saying you can never die then. No, so if you take wound damage, it must overlap your stuns to start with. Other ways to get mangled. Here's some other ways to take damage from burns. Here we go. The black. If you get the urge to take a swim out in space without benefit of a suit, you might want to reconsider, unless you're curious to see how fast your blood can boil out of your ears. Exposure to the vacuum of the verse is pretty much instant death. If a player really wants to know how much damage he'll take, The GM is encouraged to pick up all the dice on the table, roll them, and count the number as wounds. If you've ever seen a PDF that gets passed around for a while, like the lava handbook, if you fall into lava, you die, no save. That's what this is. Yeah. So other sci-fi games of the era actually had rules for how long you could survive in an airless environment, but in Serenity specifically, they're saying if you get sucked out, you're gone. It's instant death. We got rules for illness, radiation, suffocation, and some natural healing. What are we doing natural healing here? So once per day, a character can shake off some stun damage, gathering so roll your vitality or willpower, and gain back that many stun. You can do that once per day, taking a second win. And then rest, you remove 1 point of stun for every 2 hours of rest. Okay, easily enough. Wound damage is harder. You have to make a check. After 1 full day, you must succeed an endurance test to be on the mend and starting to heal. And the difficulty increases depending on how hurt you are. So you need medical assistance. Reviving the dead. When someone has expired, there is a chance to revive them. One step beyond first aid, this requires the same check and modifiers as a first aid check. What are we saying here? Is this like administering CPR or something? We're not literally reviving dead people, right? Like it's Serenity, it's not D&D. So we're giving first aid. This must mean like somebody's flatlined and you're doing chest compressions. That's how I'm reading this. And then, so you can wake somebody up who's unconscious. Then there's painkillers and surgery. Fair enough. Okay. So this is the Game Master chapter. Serenity is not meant to be a hard science fiction. This is telling you like the theming we're working with. 26th century slang. What is this technobabble table here? We're rolling on a technobabble table? What? Okay, we're rolling a D6, a D8, a D10, and a D12. All right, I'm tempted to just... I'm tempted to just use this table. So I think this might be the first time this is showing up on camera, but these are my Flumph dice. These are the dice that come with me every Sunday. So we're going to take a D6, a D8, a D10, and a D12. Where's my yellow? I've got this one here. I had a nice yellow D12, but I don't know what happened to it. All right, here we go. We're going to roll some technobabble. So 4, 5, 0, then 12. So the hydraulic vent exploded. What does that mean, Captain? It means the landing gear won't function. All right, that table works for me. I think if I was running this game, I would probably use that table all the time just because it's hilarious. So yeah, it is a Western. What makes the verse Serenity unique is the mingling of futuristic technology with the distinct flavor of the post-Civil War American West. Cool. And then we got some campaign concepts. Thrilling heroics. It's like themes for the campaign. Hidden secrets. Outcasts and misfits and freedom. These are both major, major themes in Firefly and in Serenity. So characters should have motivation, roles. This is the basic role-playing stuff. Yeah. Creating new traits if you want to do that. Designing adventures. Adventure structure. Desire. All drama is born from the desire of characters. Fair enough. Conflict, rising action, climax, resolution. Typically when designing adventures, I try... Because this is the standard model of writing fiction, right? Introduce conflict, rising action, climax, resolution. But for tabletop game stories, it doesn't always follow that same formula, and trying to follow that same formula can lead to problems at the table sometimes. I wonder if this is like the person who wrote this book just had some knowledge in writing fiction, or just how fictional stories will flow, and it's just trying to adapt that onto the page. That's something you'll see in games like this from time to time. If it works in like improv drama club, it'll work at the table. Not necessarily. I think that's the terminology this day is like every D&D player is like a theater kid at heart. Kind of true, but you can't approach D&D especially, but tabletop gaming as a whole, you can't approach it as being a purely theatrical experience. And sometimes this kind of thing will create problems at a table. I've seen it happen. We got some plot types here. Is there actually an adventure in the book? That's what I'm kind of looking for now. Yeah, here's a Reaver. Terrible screen grab of a Reaver. You can almost not see it. It just kind of looks like the Predator a little bit. Why do we have a box here for telling everyone lies? What is this for? I'm not sure why we're telling. This is just kind of saying it's okay for characters to lie to each other. Yeah, it's just part of role-playing. Stock characters, important NPCs. I do wish more games would make this distinction. In the fiction, there's what's the canonical like D&D reference is like the characters ignore the king trying to give them the quest and like make friends with the chimney sweep instead. I think it's important for GMs to have the tool to just say like this character is just a stock character, not important character, just here to like flesh out the world. I think GMs need that tool. I think tabletop books should be better at making that explicit, if that makes sense. And this is exactly the advice I would give. When you want a stock NPC to be remembered, consider giving him at least one aspect that will make him or her memorable: an annoying mannerism, remarkable beauty, unbelievable klutziness, or an asset or complication. We're playing the pronoun game again, because in the first half of this explanation, this NPC was him, and then later it's him or her. You have to pick one. You have to be consistent. Whatever way you're going to go with your pronoun game, you've got to be consistent. You can't switch from him to him or her. And don't use him or her anyway. That's a good way to date your... One of the great triumphs of the evolving English language is we've kind of just all decided to get away with using the phrases like him or her. Or S/he. Have you seen that one where it's S/he, like she or he? And it doesn't work. And it doesn't look good on the page. It doesn't feel good coming off the tongue. And it's always awkward. Just go with they, them. You're fine. Anyway, important NPCs, yeah, obviously. Then villains. I thought we would have more rules for villains specifically. Let's see. In general, tend to avoid running insane villains. These may seem tempting because they are guaranteed to act irrationally and they don't require much motivation for doing the horrible things they're doing. This lack of logical motivation can bring about a real sense of letdown if and when the heroes finally catch up to the lunatic. Reavers are villains in Serenity, and they're just crazy. Huh. That seems like a weird blurb to have in this book. So we have some fellow travelers here. So these are like stat blocks for just... You might run into an alliance officer... disillusioned veteran, the gung-ho officer, or the young and green officer. I like that we have those three distinctions. There's a grunt, high-tech bounty hunter, bartender, and owner. He's the guy that we used our plot point a few pages ago to decide he was going to have our back. Bar floozy. That's a player character. I would play a bar floozy in this game, 100%. The whore with a heart of gold. Well, no, wait a minute. Why are we... Ooh, okay. Why are we saying registered companion female and registered companion male? We're drawing a gender distinction here. Why are we doing that? They have different skills? Artistry, covert influence, seduction, persuasion, knowledge. Artistry, covert influence, seduction, persuasion, knowledge. What... She is trained in the art of self-defense, and since she never goes to a client armed, most of her training is in the martial arts. He is trained in the art of self-defense, and since he never goes to a client armed, most of his training is in the martial arts. Did you just publish the same thing twice? Why? Description. She is elegant, beautiful, refined, sophisticated, well-educated. Description. He is suave, handsome, refined, sophisticated, well-educated. Why? Why would you do this? I noticed that because on the next page we have the whore with the heart of gold and the Buddhist monk, and these are also gender locked. Apparently you can't have a male whore with a heart of gold, and you can't have a female Buddhist monk. That might actually be true. I don't know enough about Buddhism. Although we're in the 26th century now, I would expect Buddhism to have evolved quite a lot. Settler family. There's a schoolmarm in here. The highfalutin gentleman. Love that guy. Like, it's okay to have gender-locked characters. It is a Western-themed show. It's just very strange to me that they would do something like this. And, of course, you could always have a whore with a heart of gold and just say it's a guy, right? You could just... A former registered companion left the order under mysterious circumstances. Now she runs a body. I understand why. This is a character from the show that they've cast into this NPC stat block. And they're just not name-dropping them. That's what's happening here. Okay, that makes more sense. 'Cause I remember this character from the show, and I wonder if that's a licensing thing. Like, we want to have this character in the book, but we only have the license for the movie Serenity. We can't use aspects of the show Firefly. I wonder if something like that happened here. Makes a little more sense to me now. King of the Dung Heap. Love that. Again, I would play that as a player character. That sounds great. Con artist, forger, purveyor of stolen goods. We've got a reaver. We do have a stat block for a reaver here. Yeah. Special note, if reavers feel pain, they are not hindered by it, but rather thrive on it. Reavers ignore the effects of stun damage and do not suffer wound penalties for injuries. They will, however, suffer penalties for obvious physical problems. A reaver whose arm has been severed can only attack with one arm. Got it. And then Dr. Matthias and the Operative of Parliament, these are characters from the movie. Like, this is one of the main villains of the movie. And then here's the characters, the crew of the Aces and Eights. So these are kind of the sample player characters they gave you for the book. So we've got Jack Lalonde, Hua Ling. This the Captain Max Williams. Name a guy Time Bomb? Okay. Demolitions expert. Joe Henderson, a.k.a. Time Bomb. Ramona Cortez, she's our sexy nurse. Cool. And Rawhide, mercenary for hire. No, pilot of the Aces and Eights. Great. Then Chapter 7, Brief Guide to the Verse. So this would be the lore of the verse. So we're in 2518. History is programmed by the victors. That's a major theme of the show, because in the show is, 10 years or so after this big war that Mal and Zoe and their people lost. And that's why they're kind of on the outs of society now. Society sees them as the villains. So I like that they're acknowledging that history is programmed by the victors. So we hear about the Age of Terraformers, the Unification War. In the time of war, we would have never left a man behind. Maybe that's why we lost. That's a quote right out of the movie. Okay, so there's some governments. There's the Alliance in the Central. There's the independent planets. Then there's military aspects out there. I don't need to read through all this. You may or may not need to read through this if you're going to run the game, depending on how much of the built-in lore and meta plot you want to use. I usually go with a very light touch with this kind of stuff when I run games. There's another Reaver. Oh, here we go. We've got some stuff about religion right here. So Buddhism is the dominant religion through the system, particularly on the core planets. Christianity ranks second. Larger concentrations on the outer worlds. Christians migrated away from the centers of Buddhism. Most Christians follow a Protestant tradition, hailing back to earth it was. Catholicism still exists, though the exodus of long ago ended its original structure. Does that ring true to me? I don't know. I would expect more of a blend between the two than keeping the existing religious traditions we have today for 600 years worth of like colony ships and things being out there. I guess I can kind of see the distinction between like society picking one of the dominant religions and the other one's kind of migrating out to the boonies, as it were. Oh, then we got more maps. All the right, because like Miranda was the big evil planet they were trying to get to in the movie. Central planets that you can visit. Just a few paragraphs for each one. Border planets, so out on the... No, the rim is... Border planets are near enough to central planets. They have business dealings with those in the core. However, border planets are far enough away that the eyes of the Alliance can't always make out what's going on. Okay. Makes sense. This is kind of where you would run most of the game, I would think. And then the rim planets are way, way out on the edge. These are the frontier. This is where all of your Western stuff is going to happen. And then we've got the appendix at the end for slang. The show and the movie were very, very, very big on its slang. Yeah, like the Western malformed verb. He growed up real good. He come by here last night. I seen it with my own eyes. He done run off again. So you could have kind of internalized this just by watching the show before sitting down. We got Chinese phrases for pretty much everything you could ever want to say in an action situation. And then we're back to Dragonlance Legends of the Twins in store fall 2005, and we do not have a character sheet. We must have had to develop a character sheet for this, and we must have had to put one together. And that is the Serenity role-playing game. Haven't opened this book in 20 years. Probably won't open it again for another 20. You can see it's in kind of a bad state of repair. It's got some battle damage. I think it might have survived being submerged or spilled on at one point. One of the oldest books that I have. At one point, I liquidated a bunch of my old gaming books. I got rid of a lot of stuff like this. That I kind of regret doing now. Because now that I actually have nice bookshelves that I can put all my books on, which I didn't have in my 20s, I kind of wish I had kept more of these. Instead, I'm just going to start building them back up from here. So I guess that's what we'll do. That was the Serenity role-playing game. I enjoy doing little book throughs like this. And I've got extra time this week. Maybe I'll do another one before the week is out. And we'll just bring my dice back into focus slightly. So yeah, thanks for watching. If I gave you guys the inkling to... I got to check before I go. I have to check. Is this book... Where could you buy this? Oh! I found one on Amazon for $388. Nobody's... Whew. Is it like on Drive-Thru RPG or something? Is anybody paying $400 for 20-year-old books like this? Like, is the secondhand market for tabletop books like this is completely borked as like the retro game market is? It's not on Drive-Thru RPG. Oof. I guess you guys aren't playing this game. I guess you're never going to find this. I don't know where you would get a copy of this. I guess you'd have to... they're not technically space pirates, right? The game is not about space pirates specifically, but I guess if you want to play the Serenity role-playing game, you're shelling out $400 or yo-ho me hearties. Anyway, I'm going to get my mouse back over here so I can end the stream. Thanks for hanging out, guys, and watching the VOD. Maybe I'll do another book through before the week is out. I got lots of books over there. I should do one for Household at some point, considering I actually ran Household and played it. We'll see how it goes. That's it for me.